Due diligence is not a Wall Street term. It is a biblical command. And the richest man who ever lived made it the cornerstone of every decision that compounded his treasure into legend. Solomon, the architect of history's greatest financial empire, left behind a precise system for investigating before investing, examining before committing, and seeing the full picture before a single coin changed hands. By the end of this teaching, you will understand why every financial loss that has ever broken someone began with skipping a step. Solomon never skipped, and a prayer for discernment waits for you at the close. Most people do not lose money because they are unintelligent. They lose it because they are impatient. Picture the scene. You are at dinner. A friend leans across the table and lowers his voice. "I got a tip. This stock is about to explode." And in that moment, something happens inside you that has nothing to do with finance. Your pulse quickens. Your palms go slightly warm. You are already mentally spending the return before you have asked a single question. That feeling is not excitement. That feeling is the opening of a wound. Solomon identified this mechanism thousands of years before behavioral economics had a name for it. In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5, he wrote plainly, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty." Not might lead to poverty, not could, as surely. The same certainty that gravity pulls a stone down a cliff is the certainty Solomon assigned to hasty financial decisions. He was not giving a suggestion. He was describing a law of cause and effect, woven into the architecture of creation. But what exactly is due diligence? It is not a Google search. It is not scanning a headline at midnight. It is the disciplined act of gathering every available piece of truth about an asset, a business, a person, or an opportunity before you commit your resources to it. It includes reading financial statements, understanding the competitive conditions of the market, knowing the character of the people involved, and honestly measuring your own emotional temperature in the moment. Here is where the real deception hides. The hot tip, the insider whisper, the trending ticker, the breathless investment influencer screaming about a 200% return is not information. It is bait. And the fish who takes the bait earliest is the one who feeds the fishermen. Institutional investors, hedge funds, market makers, they do not operate on tips. They operate on research. When retail investors flood into a position because of social media noise, they are not catching a wave. They are providing the exit liquidity for someone who did their homework 6 months ago. Solomon called this in Proverbs chapter 28, verse 22. "A man with an evil eye hastens after wealth and does not know that poverty will come upon him." That verse is not about moral evil. The evil eye Solomon described was a corrupted focus, a gaze fixed on the prize with no peripheral vision for the risk. And there is a structural reason this pattern never changes. Information asymmetry. The seller of any asset, any business, any investment always knows more than the buyer. Always. The person presenting the opportunity has had time to package it, to emphasize its shine, and to bury its flaws in the footnotes. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 15 confirms this with surgical precision. "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." The word translated simple in Hebrew does not mean stupid. It means open to everything, without a filter. Solomon was warning against the spiritual condition of a person who has not developed the discipline to question what they are told. This is not cynicism. This is stewardship. Every resource entrusted to you carries a weight of responsibility. And the moment you hand it over without investigation, you have not just made a bad trade. You have been a poor steward of something God placed in your hands for a reason. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. Because this wisdom is landing in living rooms, offices, and phones across the world today. And I want to know where it is reaching. Charlie Munger said it better than most modern preachers. Invert. Always invert. Do not ask what will make this investment succeed. Ask what will make it fail, and then work backward from the wreckage. Eliminate stupidity before you pursue brilliance. Solomon was doing this 3,000 years before Munger was born. When Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, a structure that required 14 years of continuous construction, he did not begin with the stone. He began with the terms. He negotiated materials with Hiram of Tyre. He inventoried the labor. He mapped the supply chains. 1 Kings chapter 5 records the systematic assessment that preceded a single foundation being laid. Solomon was the wealthiest man in the ancient world, not because wealth was handed to him from above without effort, but because he applied divine wisdom to rigorous earthly preparation. At his peak, his annual gold income alone equaled over 25 tons. That is not luck. That is due diligence operating at a civilizational scale. The biblical concept of intrinsic value runs deeper than finance. Solomon, in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 14, captured the timeless negotiation table with a sentence that still describes every property deal today. It is bad, says the buyer, but when he goes away, he boasts. The buyer publicly downplays. The seller privately inflates. Both are obscuring the true substance of what is being exchanged. Solomon was not teaching cynicism here. He was teaching discernment, the ability to see the substance of a thing beneath its presented shadow. This is the biblical collision between substance and shadow. A stock price is a shadow. The actual earnings power, management integrity, and competitive strength of the underlying business is the substance. A real estate listing is a shadow. The actual soil quality, title history, and neighborhood trajectory is the substance. Every investment in human history that ended in disaster began with someone choosing the shadow over the substance, being seduced by the presentation and avoiding the investigation. Stop chasing the shadow. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2. And this is one Solomon scholars rarely cite. Says, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. It is the glory of kings to search it out." Read that again. Investigation is described as a royal act. Searching out hidden truth is called glory. This means that when you sit down and do the hard, unglamorous work of reading balance sheets, reviewing property records, or questioning the assumptions of a business plan, you are not being paranoid. You are functioning as a king. You are operating in your God-given dignity as a steward of resources. If this wisdom is resonating, hit the like button now. You are not just learning finance, you are recovering a royal instinct. Blind investing is not simply a financial error. It is a spiritual diagnosis. When someone places their provision into something they have not examined, they are not exercising faith. They are exercising presumption. And there is a critical difference. Faith says, "I have done the work. I have sought wisdom. And now I trust God with the outcome." Presumption says, "I have not done the work, but I expect God to cover my negligence." 2. Solomon made this distinction plain in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 1. "Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil." The fool's sacrifice. That phrase should stop you cold. You can be sincerely committed to giving while being completely undiscerning about the vehicle you are giving to or investing in. Sincerity, does not replace investigation. Benjamin Graham built an entire philosophy around this. He personified the market as Mr. Market, an unstable business partner who arrives at your door every morning with a new offer, sometimes wildly optimistic, sometimes devastated by despair. Graham's warning was precise. Mr. Market is your servant, not your advisor. The moment you let his emotional state determine your financial decisions, you have surrendered the throne. You are now being ruled by noise. The price of an asset on any given morning is not its value. It is Mr. Market's mood. And moods are not data. Here is where patience becomes a financial weapon. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 27, rarely quoted, rarely preached, says, "Whoever is slothful will not roast his game, but the diligent man will get precious wealth." The hunter who catches the prey but never processes it ends with nothing. In financial terms, this is the person who finds a legitimate opportunity but never completes the research phase. They hold the animal but let it go to waste because the follow-through required effort. C.S. Lewis understood this at a psychological level. He wrote that the most dangerous moment for any person is not when they face a dramatic temptation, but when they face the quiet, grinding call to do the unglamorous work no one will applaud. Due diligence is that work. Nobody celebrates the person who spent 40 hours reading a company's annual report before deciding not to invest. There is no drama in avoidance, but there is preservation. And preservation of capital is the first law of compounding. Know the state of what you own. Understand the terrain before you plant a seed in it. Fear of missing out is not a social media invention. It is an ancient spiritual weakness wearing modern clothing. It appears in every generation. The dot-com investor in 1999 who poured savings into a company with no revenue because everyone else was. The person who bought real estate at peak valuations in 2006 because prices had never gone down. The individual who converted their entire retirement account into a speculative asset in 2021 because a forum said it would change the world. The mechanism is identical across every era. Someone creates social proof of urgency, and the undisciplined mind abandons its process to chase the crowd. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 26 delivers the counter-command with the force of a surgeon's cut. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Careful thought, steadfast. Those are not the qualities of someone reacting to a trending topic. Those are the qualities of someone who has defined their criteria in advance and refuses to move outside them regardless of external noise. Sir John Templeton lived this. His most famous trades were executed at the precise moment of maximum pessimism, when assets were so thoroughly abandoned by the crowd that investigation had essentially become free. In 1939, he borrowed money to purchase $100 of every stock, trading below $1 on the New York Stock Exchange. Everyone around him saw wreckage. Templeton saw mispriced substance. He did not act on optimism. He acted on examination. And the returns compounded for decades. This is the principle of good abandonment. Before committing to any financial decision, Solomon's wisdom demands a quarantine period, a deliberate pause of no less than 48 hours, where you allow the emotional charge of the opportunity to dissipate. If the investment is still logical, after 2 full days of cold examination, the logic is real. If the urgency evaporates the moment the emotion fades, the opportunity was never about substance. It was about your fear. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 2 delivers this verdict without softness. Desire without knowledge is not good. How much more will hasty feet miss the way? Desire alone is not a strategy. Enthusiasm alone is not analysis. Wanting something to be true is the most dangerous form of research in existence, because the heart that wants to believe will always find the confirmation it seeks. The ancient wisdoms and the modern masters arrived at the same place by different roads, and that convergence should carry weight. John Wesley did not build one of history's most effective movements on sentiment alone. He built it on disciplined understanding. His famous three-rule system for financial life, gain all you can, save all you can, give all you can, is almost always quoted as a feel-good motto. But Wesley's first rule carried a qualifier most people ignore. Gain all you can through honest understanding. He explicitly excluded gains made through ignorance of what you were doing, gains that violated your neighbor's well-being, and gains that came from willful blindness to the risks involved. Wesley was a Proverbs man without using the name. He was teaching stewardship as a moral discipline, not a mechanical formula. This is the final distinction that separates biblical financial thinking from secular financial thinking. Secular finance says, maximize return. Biblical stewardship says, maximize understanding, then act from that understanding, and trust God with what the diligence cannot control. The outcome belongs to God. The investigation belongs to you. Proverbs chapter 16 verse 9 confirms the partnership. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. You plan with rigor. God steers with sovereignty. But the planning still happens. The research still occurs. The 48-hour quarantine still applies. You do not skip your assignment and call it faith. If this teaching has served you today, if these ancient principles have given you a sharper lens for the decisions ahead of you, subscribe now. There are people who need this wisdom and have not yet found this channel. Your subscription is how they do. And now, before we close, I want to invite you into a moment of alignment. Close your eyes if you can, or align your thoughts with mine now. Father, we come before you not with anxiety, but with intention. We ask for eyes that see past the presentation and into the substance. We ask for the patience of kings, those who search, who question, who sit with the evidence until it speaks clearly. Deliver us from the haste that transfers our provision to those who planned while we panicked. Deliver us from the desire that outruns our discernment. Grant us the spirit of examination, the grace of restraint, and the courage to walk away from what shines but does not sustain. We receive the wisdom you offered Solomon, not for pride, but for faithful stewardship of every resource entrusted to our hands. Let every financial decision we make be an act of worship and not of fear. Amen. Go forward with open eyes and unhurried hands. What God has for you will not expire while you examine it carefully.